Our message for today is your all on the altar? Giving God the best you. At some point in our lives, we've either attended a wedding as a guest. For some of us, God has purposed that we have been the bride at some point in our lives. But one of the things that we witness at a natural wedding is the bride. She tends to be the center of attention on that very special day. People know that there's a bridegroom, but he really don't matter on that day. It's just about the bride. We witness the bride as she brings her bestest, beautifully adorned external self down the aisle before a crowd of onlookers. She eventually ends up at the altar where the anxiously awaiting bridegroom meets her and takes her by the hand. For some brides, they go through months and even years of preparation for that special day of being a bride and becoming one with the bridegroom. For some brides, they go through such extreme makeovers that while the bridegroom knows who is supposed to be walking down the aisle, they know the person that they've asked to become one with them for all eternity. But sometimes in the bride's effort to be her most beautiful, bestest self, she feels the need to change her entire identity to the one that is her beloved, barely recognizes her. It doesn't change his mind about whether or not he's going to go through with the ceremony. He knows she's in there somewhere. She just doesn't know how deep and how wide he's having to go to find her. So while the bridegroom may barely recognize the person presenting themselves to be wed, they still anxiously await for her arrival because this is their day. So only thing that he can do with all the cover-ups and all the extreme makeovers, he hopes that at least when the veil is lifted, he will recognize his beloved, the bride whom he loves. So unlike the natural bridegroom, Jesus, our bridegroom, does not expect a perfectly adorned bride to come into his place, to meet him at his altar. He lovingly knows the layers of our lives, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The gown that I'm wearing is my wedding gown from 19 years ago. After the wedding, my husband and I went to the hotel to prepare for our honeymoon. And I gave the dress to my sister Barbara to safekeeping until I got back. Well, I had planned to try the dress back on so that I could just be in the mirror and enjoy being the bride without all these onlooker peoples that was at my wedding. I just wanted to have my private moment. But somehow time passed. And so a few years later, I decided that was my moment to try on my wedding dress again and to just imagine being the bride for which my husband was anxiously awaiting as my bridegroom. So I went to my home in Orangeburg where my sister and I shared, and I unzipped the bag that I thought was, the zip of all. It was going to keep it, it was going to preserve it. Nothing could happen to my beautiful wedding gown. But when I unzipped the bag, it didn't matter that I had taken every precaution to avoid it from being damaged or to avoid it from being stained. This is what I discovered when I unzipped it. At first, I wanted to cry. I was very upset. But then I said, well, who am I going to get upset with? Because my sister had transitioned home. So I could not ask her what happened to my wedding dress. And for those of you all who knew my sister, if she was here, she'd probably say, hey, it happened, it's done. You've already used it, so what do you need it for? I'll never know the hows of the stains and how they came to be. But what I do know, I don't know the how, but I do know the why. The why for the stain represents how we come as brides before the bridegroom. God had a purpose for the dress becoming stained because he knows that we are stained as his brides as we come before the bridegroom. Today, God is calling each of us, his spiritual brides, to put our all on the altar and to offer ourselves as his living, breathing, often flawed, much stained, worn, and often nervous and shaking worshipers of his holy adoration before his altar. As a child, I went to the altar a lot every Sunday. That's how I dealt with the childhood neglect and emotional abuse. I would just go to the altar. Didn't need to talk to anybody, didn't need anybody laying hands on me. I just went to the altar because I needed to get to the one who I knew understood. God requires our worship to be wholly adorned, not by our external beauty, not by the ways that we adorn ourselves, but by the power of his presence, of his Holy Spirit. His Holy Spirit is what prepares us to meet the bridegroom. His Holy Spirit is what adorns us in our beauty. It gives us our beauty for ashes. It gives us the bride that is like no other bride. We don't have to worry about whether somebody is wearing our dress. They can't wear the garment of worship or the garment of sacrifice that God has called you to wear. There is no one in this room, no one in the world that is adorned in your bridal garment of worship. God longs to take our externally adorned beauty and transform it by his grace from the inside out. You know, in the world, the brides go through these extreme makeovers, and they pay a lot of money for this stuff. When God says, my makeover is free, it's called grace. Jesus has already paid the price for the makeover. 2 Corinthians 12 says, 3 times I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I'm glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me. So that the power of Christ can work through me. Not the external temporary things that we adorn ourselves into. When God is moving to transform us, he doesn't send us to world systems for us to be transformed. He moves us to worship, not a makeover. In fact, our makeover is a spiritual makeover. And that spiritual makeover is worship before a bridegroom. So I want us to look at some ways that we, as the bride of Christ, how we come to the altar to meet our bridegroom. First of all, we need to give God our best off the top. That's just not about tithes. Our entire being belongs to him. You shall have no other God other than me. So we give him the best off the top. Romans 12 says, and so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and a holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. This is truly the way that we worship him. We cannot give God an offering that costs us nothing. There's a cost to everything. There's a cost to our worship. And we should be very grateful that it was paid in full through the sacrificial life of Jesus Christ. So you can't buy worship in a bottle. You can't order it online. Amazon does not have anything on God's kingdom way of dispelling and giving us worship. I recently attended a conference in Asheville, North Carolina, and they had people from over 17 countries there. And everybody was complaining because the time of year that we were in Asheville, the leaves should have changed colors by then. But they hadn't. I mean, very few of the leaves had changed colors. So this man who came from a third world country, He didn't understand all this. You people that have all this comfort, you sitting here mad because the leaves didn't change the colors when you wanted them to. But he shared something. He said, we often marvel at the beauty of the fall coloring of the leaves on the trees. While the scenery is so beautiful and a testament to God's artistic genius, yet it is the dead leaves that fall on the ground that actually feeds the earth as it decomposes, and many other trees and many other forests are birthed from its decomposition and provide lives to others. Worship costs us something. We have to die to ourselves. We fall before him not just in a physical posture where we are on our knees. We fall before him in humility and strength. We say, yes, Lord, I accept your will, your plan, and your purpose. Today, my sisters, are you willing to fall? Are you willing to have something in you die so that somebody else can have life?